No, that's a letter from Rob.
Okay, well, that's not right then. That's a letter from Rob. I have the one from Kirk.
The one from Kirk is in your packet.
Yep.
All right, we'll call this meeting into order. Can we have a roll call?
In attendance this evening, we have Amy Levisek.
Here.
Gail Albert, Mike Delavecchia, Louis Joseph.
Here.
Stacy Susie, Scott McWilliam, staff in attendance, planning director Rob Mora, our assistant planning director Tyler Carmichael, and myself, recording secretary Scott Pelchat.
All right, thank you. And we'll accept the minutes. Do we go for, need to vote for that?
If there's no recommended changes to the minutes, you could recommend them approved as presented. If there's no
Right.
comments from the board.
Anybody? All right, so we'll call a vote to accept the minutes as is.
Okay. No, we don't have to vote on them.
No votes?
Oh, we don't have to vote?
No, you don't have to. If there's no requested changes, you can accept them as they're presented.
All right. So forth. All right,
Can you hand me one of those packets?
all right. Should we jump to these guys now?
Yeah, first on the agenda.
All right, so first on the agenda, it's 492 Endicott Street, North, Moose Ledge Estate. And I believe that's PL 2024-001 CS, PL 2024-002 CUP.
Oh, yeah. You can also seat your alternates tonight as well.
Oh, okay, so,
We haven't been approved. I don't know if Scott supplied it. If we're not approved as alternate members, until one of us or both of us do, you have to make,
Oh, okay.
you have to seat us.
so Scott and
This is just procedural nonsense.
Gail will be in attendance. I mean, we'll be
Seated.
voting more members tonight. Excuse me, everybody.
Now.
I'm usually not the chair.
Okay, so we'll let the applicant come
Yeah,
forward here.
yeah.
Okay.
So first, let me
Accept the application?
make a comment.
Do we accept
first.
it?
Um,
Okay.
So they're here for application acceptance tonight, and then they are also on the agenda for a conceptual review of the application
Okay,
under 8.1. So what happened is they submitted a conceptual review back in July, and they went to Conservation Commission twice, once in
Yes.
July and then another one in October or November.
Yep.
And during this time, there was a lot of staff turnover, and they were informed that they did not have to go to planning board as part of as a conceptual review. But since they're doing a cluster subdivision, it is required that they do the conceptual review. So,
so should we do a conceptual review first?
we have them on the agenda for the public hearing because their application is complete. So what we would need from the board, should they wish to continue, would be to accept their application as complete and then continue that for the next meeting in April. And then you can hear them tonight for their conceptual, so that everything is lined for when they come back to the planning board in April.
Okay. So, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the application as presented as complete.
Second.
Do
And then
we,
I'll need a motion to schedule it for a public hearing.
Oh,
For the
I'll
April
add, I'll add that to the,
Should we
I'll
add
add
that
that to
to
the
the-
same motion.
Okay.
So I'll amend my motion to include that we schedule it for a public hearing at the April, do you have the date?
April 2nd.
April 2nd, 2024 meeting.
Second the motion with the amendment.
yeah, can we have a vote? Any nays? please? I'm sure you're not. Unanimous.
Perfect. And then if you just want to pull them forward from 8.1 so they can do their conceptual.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So I'm presenting, we're really a lot further along than the conceptual.
Okay.
But I'll give you a brief overview of the whole thing and, you know, so next month, when we have the actual hearing, I don't know how much you want to hear again, but I can update you at that point where we are. So this property is, it's 492 Endicott Street. It's on the west side of Endicott Street, Route 3, a little more than a mile north of Weirs Beach and a quarter mile south of Fun Spot and the go-kart park. This was previously used, I think fairly recently, as a paintball park. And there's actually a gravel drive coming into the property here and a big gravel parking area or flat area where the cars used to park. Total area of the property is 22.5 acres. Other than the gravel parking lot, it's all wooded, and the slopes are fairly moderate, roughly 10%, somewhere in that range. There's a seasonal runoff that runs through the property, kind of cuts the property in half from the northeast down to the southwest, and there's a big wetland down in the southwest corner. The abutting properties are not developed and they are wooded. Except for across the street is Aqua Vista, the Aqua Vista development. This property is zoned in the commercial resort zone, and what we're proposing is to develop it under the cluster provisions of the ordinance. So what we've decided to do was develop the front half of this, the front 12 acres basically, and leave the 10 acres, donate that for conservation land. So we're only developing half of it. We're proposing 38 units, single-family detached homes on 5,000 square foot lots, or basically it's limited common area, you know, which is basically a lot line, but it's going to be condominium ownership. So I can flip to the pretty picture now. This gives you a little bit better view of it from where you're sitting anyway. So this is a project, the 10 acres conservation land will be down here. This light green is a wetland that comes down through here. And when we actually started this project, and maybe I should go back to last summer, we had old wetlands. We had the wetlands updated since then. And the old wetlands, I can show it to you if you want to see it, but they showed a little bit in here, maybe a little touch of wetland in here, and some more wetland down there. So we didn't even know that this was contiguous down through. We had Lou Curley come back out last summer and redelineate the wetlands, and he defined it, you know, as you see it here, where it's basically a seasonal runoff, but it's all jurisdictional wetlands. So that kind of left us with a challenge, because when we did the conceptual, we had no wetland impacts. But then when we got the new wetland survey done, we found out that we are impacting wetlands in here and in here and buffer as well. So we can get into that more later. But what we're proposing is this will be 2,050 feet of road. There'll be gravity sewer. This is all sloping downhill this way, so the gravity sewer will come down this way to here to a pump station, and this will all get pumped back up to the sewer in Endicott Street. There is a existing 8-inch water service that was put in when they put the water main in, coming into this property, so will connect to that. We're proposing a closed drainage system, curbing and catch basins and pipes that'll all be gathering the stormwater, collecting it and discharging it into 2 detention ponds, one here and one in here, the bigger one being down here. This is kind of a forebay, if you will, to this detention pond, and then outletting into the seasonal stream thereafter. And then all the electric and utilities will be underground, and the homes will be on propane gas. There is no gas in the street here at Endicott Street. So, like I said, we are impacting the wetlands at 3 crossings, actually. There is a culvert in this here. There's some wetlands up here where the drainage comes from across the street and basically heads this way and off to the north. The gravel driveway crosses over this wetland, and there was a culvert put in years ago, and we're gonna be rebuilding that. So there's a little impact there, and then there's an impact at this wetland crossing, at this wetland crossing. We're putting in culverts at those 2 crossings. So that impact is, it's fairly minor, 2,746 square feet total. The wetland buffer is 47,900 square feet, or 1.1 acre. And I can show you, I have plans that highlight the buffer and the impacts, but a lot of that is because we're basically running parallel to the wetland here. So we're encroaching in that, it's a 50-foot wetland buffer, and we're encroaching in that with this road. We wanted to maintain this loop road for safety and for, good access, and, we didn't really want to eliminate this, and I think that would be prohibited by your regulations anyway, because it would make the dead end more than 1,000 feet. So for circulation and what have you. Then we also, which is allowed in your zoning, will be encroaching on the 50-foot buffer in several areas. Along the road here, where the road is running parallel to the property line, we can encroach. The zoning allows us to encroach within the first 25 feet of that 50-foot buffer, and that's what we're doing in all 3 locations. One is here, one's back here, where we're gonna have a pretty big cut for these homes in here, and then down here, we have some grading from the pond that's encroaching in that 50-foot buffer. So but those impacts add up to 16,000 square feet. And then the total area being disturbed to build this project is about 8.7 acres. So I probably said more than a conceptual presentation, but I didn't quite know where to draw the line on that. So, I can come back next month and update you. We have 4 state applications, 4 state permits we have to get: the DOT driveway curb cut, DES wetlands, DES sewer, and DES site specific. And all those applications are in, except for the sewer that's still being reviewed by your DPW here in town. And, we want to get the pump station right before we send that off to Concord. So I do have other plans here that show this is a wetland impacts. You can kind of see the dark shaded is the buffer impacts, and the double cross hatching is wetland impacts themselves. And then I have another plan that shows the buffer, these buffer impacts that I was talking about earlier. Here, here, and here. So that's about it. Can answer any questions.
So we'll open up questions.
Let me flip it back to the pretty picture.
I mean, it's not open to the public, but we can ask questions.
Are questions for the applicant or
Yeah,
planning? Should I wait?
Planning.
For the planning department, just a couple quick questions. Does the application, is it consistent with the density ordinances, or is there some sort of waiver involved there
Nope, that's, everything's meets all the zoning requirements for density.
for density?
Yep.
And parking?
Yep.
Parking as well. Okay, very good.
I just have,
And, I'm sorry, Gail.
No, go ahead, Scott.
There's a number of waivers associated with this application. Will they just be included with the approval of the application, or they need to be addressed separately?
No, we can address those next month when we come to
Yeah.
public hearing.
Right.
They'll need to present on all of those waivers.
Yeah,
and
and
then
they'll
you'll-
get approved
And then you'll need
individually?
to approve them
Okay,
individually.
very
Yep.
good, yep. Procedural question, thank you.
and my procedural question is with the impact on the wetlands buffer, does he have to get that through the zoning board? Or is it cluster subdivision render that moot?
No, so there's, for cluster subdivision, the buffers, within the ordinance, there's a waiver process for that. And they have submitted the 2 waivers that are required for that. One of them is the reduction of the right-of-way, and then the other one is the impact into that buffer area as you described.
Okay, and that's gonna be done at this board. My question, I guess, is does he have any reason that he's gonna have to go to the zoning board?
Nope, everything can be handled right here at planning board.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm assuming this already went, I mean, you said it went to Concom twice,
Yes.
and they had 0 issues with this.
Nope, they supported the application.
Thank you.
And that's because we were talking about the backland, the back 10 acres being donated for conservation.
I love it.
Sir, I'm curious, when you first come in the driveway, you have some parking spaces there. What is that?
Oh, yes, so we're gonna have like a gazebo there, maybe it's a place for some people to congregate or whatever, and then the mail kiosk will be just beyond that, beyond those parking spaces, so, yeah.
But
Are
could
those-
follow up with that, I'm sorry. I know there's some limited sidewalks you're talking about, since you mentioned the kiosk and the gazebo. Could you sort of outline where those sidewalks would
The
be?
sidewalks are
in
up
that
in that
region?
area, yeah, from this, where the parking spots start, over to the, mail kiosk in that area there,
Just that stretch?
yes.
Okay.
Thought there was more than that, yeah, I guess that's it.
Is there a possibility to have more sidewalks going all the way to all the roads in there? In terms of space, how much would that?
Yeah, we looked at that, and we actually had sidewalk on there in the beginning, on the inside of the circle. But then what we found, or what we thought was, these lots are pretty small, and the houses are pretty close to the roadway, so it would really take up more front yard than, I think it would look nicer without the sidewalk almost. And with the limited amount of traffic, and I wrote up, in my waiver request, all these arguments, but with the limited traffic, we're thinking that, it's gonna be a walkable street, really. I mean, the cars are gonna be going slow down there, and, we don't think there's a real, need for safety reasons, but, so,
Is that a one-way drive?
no, it's two-way, yep.
These are not going to be public roads?
Privately owned,
Okay.
yep.
Will it be gated?
Excuse me?
Will it be gated?
No.
How many square foot, each units again?
Excuse me?
How many square foot are you thinking for each units?
Square foot?
For the units? yeah.
The lots are roughly 5,000.
Well, I mean like the actual like house.
These are shown as, these aren't actual houses shown here, these are,
Right, but I imagine you have
Building
some
envelopes,
idea of what.
but I think we made these 28 by.
You wanna,
They're roughly
somewhere between 1,500 and 1,700 feet. They're modest houses,
All right.
no McMansions.
What will the building height be?
Two-story?
Yeah, it'll be under your requirement, okay, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Let's call it workforce housing. It sounds better.
City
What-
trash?
Trash pickup will be hired out.
Oh, okay.
Not the city.
Because they're
Be
private
private.
roads, they'll have to have their
Yeah.
own trash.
So is there a dumpster on site, or
No, it'll be picked.
everybody will
yeah.
keep their own? Okay.
So you'll subcontract it with that with someone, and you'll have
Right.
your own little trash day and all that other stuff.
And just one more thing on the houses. So this development is, the land is sloping from here downhill. And basically, you're cutting on the uphill side, filling on the downhill side. So the houses on the uphill side will be garage unders probably, most likely. And the houses on the downhill side will be walkouts in the back. So that's kind of what we're thinking of and that's the way the whole thing has been graded out. Coming down the slope here, you'll have a mix of both, or maybe some, without garage under or walkouts, but where you're basically matching grade. But then here again, on the lower end of the road, you have the same thing, cutting the high side, filling the low side.
So on the south end, what's the closest lot that's habited? Or how close is it?
Close to what now?
I'm looking towards the south, and the topography is gonna slope down, right? Towards the south. What's the closest lot that's habited right now? Do you know?
Closest lot, that's,
He said it was all woodland. It's
Right.
undeveloped.
Well, the 10 acres woodland, but I don't know what's beyond that.
Oh.
Which I'm curious about.
Oh, do you know,
There are butters.
do you know to the south, but what abuts it to the south?
At the bottom of the hill.
Who your butter is.
it's Aqua Verdant, and they own this piece too.
Oh.
And I thought that they,
Yeah,
We're
it's
looking at-
undeveloped.
Okay.
right,
I'm just trying to see if anybody's gonna complain about the increased runoff. Like,
well, technically, we're not supposed to have any increase in runoff, and that's why, it goes to alteration of terrain for them to review it. And
Retention.
yeah.
The drainage has to go through these two detention ponds, and then it goes back into this seasonal runoff. But there is a fairly significant wetland further down below, which will also absorb,
Okay.
any
Okay, no.
any storms or what have you, that go down through there.
Right.
So I don't think,
So like-
they'll experience any increase.
With two retention ponds.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. On one of the areas when you first come in, it looks like you've got a significant wetland to bridge in order to get into the property to the right. As you come down the road and then you're gonna make a right-hand turn to go there, are you bridging? Yes, exactly. How wide is that? Is that a culvert? Is that gonna be a small bridge? How do you plan on doing that and constructing that road during construction, that you're not gonna chew that area up?
Yeah, I think we're proposing an 18-inch culvert, basically, is all, really, if you zoom out a little bit, if I had the topo in this area, you could see that this is really the beginning of a runoff. This is where it really starts, so there's no real significant water going down through here until maybe, you get down further and it all accumulates, but this is really the head, where it all starts, right here. And, I was surprised when we found that Luke thought it was all jurisdictional, because the original wetlands mapping did not show it all that way at all. And I think that the 18-inch culvert is actually even oversized for the amount of flow going down through there, but, you know, DES likes you to be bigger than smaller, I guess.
Are you proposing any trails in the conservation area, or will there be a boundary?
There are trails down there now. I don't know if they're old logging roads or if they're roads created from the paintball park or what have you, but I guess we'd leave that up to the association or.
We're just leaving it, excuse me, we're leaving it in its natural state at this point.
So will there be like a boundary or anything to keep people out of there?
Well, it's,
Like a fence or?
no, it's not planned.
Are you thinking people coming in from other properties? Is that what you're thinking?
I was thinking more of trying to keep as much undisturbed as possible. Just to kind of discuss, sometimes conservation will give out little placards to put on saying conservation area, kindly stay out, or just because there's so much development going on, there's gonna be an influx of wildlife and going in there.
Yeah. On top of which, you also have the dilemma is we don't know who's going to be living there. And if there are trails out there that could become somebody's private ATV park, which is kind of contrary to the conservation district principle. When you get people out there with all-terrain vehicles that, and I'm saying, you know, there could be people who live there. And, you know, I mean, we're not here to talk really about that conservation area tonight, but
Well, we did talk to the Conservation Commission about that, some of the limitations that they want to see on it. And,
Right.
One of the members is actually an abutter to
Yep.
the project,
know
Michael
that. Yep.
Foot. And he had some good input on that. And we don't have the conservation easement drawn up yet, written out, or we talked to the Conservation Commission about would they take the land, and they weren't really receptive to that, but they like the idea of a easement being placed over it. So we're kind of in the works of trying to resolve some of that, and we're not sure where that's gonna go right now, but it'd be our opinion to wanna donate that to the town.
We would like to do that, but if they don't want it, then that's fine. We'd like to find a conservation trust, okay, to have them be the stewards of the land.
What's that?
I said Parks and Recs.
Listen, bite your tongue.
Or Community Land and Trust, I believe.
Yeah,
They're
anything
always,
that you could give me, okay, or a phone
Um,
number or a name. we'll-
Lakes Region Planning Commission also has all the info for
What was the name again? I'm sorry. I didn't-
LRPC, Lakes Region Planning Commission.
I can email it to you.
Okay.
They work with all of them, and they will accept, or at least work with you to try and work on accepting.
Right.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Yes, sir. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Move on to 8.2.
Oh, so now we're on 7.2 for
Skip.
public hearing for the proposed zoning map rezone.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Is that different than the one you gave us?
No, that's the same one. I just gave you I just printed a map with streets.
Printed the map of the street.
All right, so we'll move on to 7.2. Proposed zoning map rezone. Was,
So it's just,
Just
that's just for
added
public
this.
hearing, so we can just open it for public hearing. If
okay.
anybody has any comments for it.
Oh, okay. So we'll open public hearing at 7:02.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Kevin Morissette, 518 Shore Drive in Laconia, and I'd just like to say that I support this rezoning of Old Prescott Hill Road to take the confusion out of that little section that's chopped up into 3 different zones. So I'd just like to say I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Logic.
Anyone else?
Amazing.
Are we still broadcasting online?
Yep.
Oh, that's, all right. Guess we should. We'll give it another minute or so.
That's fine.
Sometimes people online are kind of slow typing their words. Can you actually see the attendance?
Oh, Scott, can you see how many people are watching us online? Just
One.
one person.
It's probably Charlie.
I guarantee it's not Charlie.
No, yeah, exactly.
It's not Charlie.
It's not Charlie.
Okay.
We just taught Charlie's cell phone about 2 years ago.
Now I hope it's Charlie.
I do, but he'd laugh because he knows it.
All right, we'll close public hearing at 7:03. All right.
And so then after, you'll have to decide whether you want to vote to accept the rezone and move it forward to city council for adoption, or decide, or any other decision you could make.
Do we want to have a discussion first?
Do you need a motion first and then the discussion?
Yeah,
I'll make that motion to,
You
Okay.
can discuss it
To-
first, you can,
But I think we make the motion and then discuss it if it's seconded, because there's no point discussing it if there's no second.
Fair enough.
I'll make that motion.
And I will second it.
Let's discuss.
Let's discuss.
Now we can discuss it.
All right. That's an anonymous yes.
Now we can talk about it.
Okay.
It clears, I'm not intimately familiar with this area, but it makes sense. I mean, it's what's there now. From what I understand, from what I've been told about it, there's no surprises here. It's just kind of a tweak on a zoning map.
it is, it's correcting some of the discrepancies we have currently in the zoning map, to align it with what it is in reality, so.
Okay. All right. Sensing no further discussion, will will somebody make a motion to?
Already made the motion.
Oh, well, right. So let's vote on it. So what's the yeas?
I vote yay.
Okay.
All right. Unanimous. Thank you.
All right, so that's done, and
So,
so now we're on 8.2.
yeah, conceptual for. All right, so now we have a conceptual for 1162 and 1182 Union Ave.
This is the other one. This is the Union Avenue project.
Scott, do you need him to have that over here so that it can be seen on the video?
I can put it over there.
Yeah, I can catch it from both sides. so
Okay.
we- But
I was gonna put 2 boards up if that's
Oh.
all right, and that way,
actually, yeah, that's right there, and then, yep.
We just like things
I want to
blocking
move that
me.
over.
I'm
a
just
little bit.
blocking the audience.
Fat, no, it's blocking me. I love it.
I'd move that over about,
Come towards me, right there.
Right there, all right.
Excellent. So for the record, Sam Foisey with Meridian Land Services representing this application. I also have the owners and the applicants as well as the design and development team if there's any questions that are more specific to those items. I'll try and keep this more high level since this is conceptual meeting, but The proposed project's located at 182, the applicant is Union Ave 182 Realty LLC, and proposing a 40-unit residential building located on lots 3-24-220-1 and 8. It's zoned urban commercial, or UC. The total properties together are about 2.5 acres. And then this property is subject to the New Hampshire DES Shoreline Protection Zone, but not the Laconia Shoreline Overlay District. It's located on the east side of Laconia, and then it's also on the east side of, I'm probably going to butcher this, Paugus Bay. Paugus Bay. Thank you. From down in Amherst, so I'm not as familiar with the lake region. So the existing use of the property. So there's an existing T-Bones restaurant and Cactus Jack's that's located on the more northerly property. And then there is a previously Friendly's now vacant property. So the general topography of the site is it's at grade, adjacent to Union Ave. It slopes to the rear, I wouldn't call it severely through the parking lot, but once it gets to the edge of the parking lot, there is quite a drop off there. The existing access points, there are 4 existing access points. This isn't a very good plan since it's the proposed plan, not the existing conditions, but there's an existing full access point here to the north. There is a in just to the south of T-Bones. Then there is an out just to the south of that. Then when you get to the Friendly's parcel, which is here, there is a full access point here. Currently on the property, it looks like there are some catch basins. All those do is provide stormwater conveyance and don't appear to provide any volume or rate control, and don't appear to provide any water quality to it. So the project goals. This project all started with, if you're a customer of T-Bones, T-Bones needs a ton of parking since the town's parking calculations don't really mimic how successful T-Bones is. So this all started with a property next door to them, was for sale, it had parking on it, and that's why it was purchased. In purchasing that, there's a secondary goal of providing some housing for their employees or future employees, as everywhere around in New Hampshire is short-staffed. Housing is typically the reason why they're short-staffed, and this helps solve that goal. And then the third goal to that is providing housing to help pay for these improvements by merging these two properties together, expanding the parking area, and then providing housing for their employees. So we recognize that we need the following permits: the Laconia site plan permit, the Laconia subdivision permit to create the condominium. That would be the mechanism for subdividing the condominium units, as well as having these two uses legally on the same lot. Within that subdivision, there would be a consolidation too, and consolidating the lots instead of doing the lot merger process. There's also the Laconia driveway permit. Although this is a state road, I believe it's an urban compact, which gives the jurisdiction to the DPW department. There is the Laconia excavation permit for connecting to the utilities within the right-of-way. The Laconia water connection permit, Laconia sewer connection permit. I don't think we're going to need a DES sewer connection permit because we're not extending the system, we're just connecting to it, but we'll figure that out as we move through the process. And then we'll also need a shoreline permit or DES shoreline permit, because we are within the New Hampshire or the DES shoreline protective zone. And because we are within that zone and disturbing 50,000 square feet of area, we'll also need a alteration of terrain permit. So, while the existing site has 4 access points, the proposed site has 3 access points. The first access point will maintain this full in-out just to the north of T-Bones. The access to the south of T-Bones will be consolidate those two into a full access instead of having one in and one out. And then we will relocate the existing Friendly's further away to help expand the parking area. Parking. So this proposed plan has 174 spaces. The reason for that parking is, again, T-Bones needs a lot of extra spaces. So that gives T-Bones an extra about 40 spaces more than what the town requirements would be, but that is what they feel they need. The way this is accomplished is we actually have 30 parking spaces that will be underneath the proposed building. There is a benefit to that, as it is covered parking, and in the wintertime, those spaces will be desirable to the tenants of it. As far as I'm aware right now, these 30 spaces will be reserved strictly for the tenants of the building, as it wouldn't make sense for customers to use that. So getting onto utilities, rather simple will be connecting to town water and town sewer. I haven't done enough investigation to know where gas is, so I'll have to get with the DPW department as well as Liberty Gas to determine where that will be. I suspect there will be some form of pump system to pump it up to grade where the sewer is within the right-of-way. But I'll work that out with town staff and the DPW department. So then we get into stormwater. One of the main benefits of this project is this is a existing development that does not have any stormwater treatment. I haven't had a conversation with AOT yet, but it's next on my to-do list, is determining what level of permitting will be required through them. From my experience, I expect that I'll, at a minimum, need to do water quality. Rate and volume control, I'll obviously meet, but since the project is already developed, since it's already has a large impervious area, rates and volumes will be matched, but it really isn't a concern in this case. But so there is two right now subsurface stormwater systems to provide water quality. We'll do that through infiltration. We've already dug test pits and have determined we have great separations to seasonal that will allow us to have great infiltration in this area. So that would be one basin here and then another subsurface system here. This basin will capture pretty much half of the proposed disturbed area. This will capture the rest of the other disturbed area. This will probably continue to go in the direction, as we don't want to disturb too much, but we'll look into possibility of capturing as much impervious and treating as much impervious as we possibly can. So then that brings me to architectural. That's over here to my left. I'm a civil engineer, not an architect, so if you have any questions, I do have the architect in the audience, and she can answer those questions better for you.
All right,
That concludes my presentation.
thank you. And Amy?
How many parking spaces are we talking total?
Total, let me, actually I got it right here. Talking 174.
It's too many. I'm not gonna
What do you have
support
currently?
I know currently the T-Bones has about 96 to 100, somewhere in that range.
On their current property,
their
not
cur-
including the friendlies?
Not including the friendlies. I haven't done a total parking calc of what's existing and not, because I just focused on getting T-Bones as much parking as possible.
We historically have had to lease spaces from abutting neighbors, there's just never been enough parking for us.
Like if you drive past the site now, you'll see that the previous friendly signs has a sign on it that says additional T-Bones parking here. And I can get you that number of what the existing is to help understand how much additional we are adding. I will also add that this multifamily parking, the town of 1.5, in my experience, I would say that's a little bit low. It probably is somewhere just shy of 2, and a lot of towns do have a 2 per unit. So while if you factor that in, we're not drastically over parking it, but we're also solving an existing problem that T-Bones has.
So you have 30 under the building,
Mm-hmm.
and how, okay. So, and that's employee parking?
No, so that would be residence parking
Resident.
for this building here. And I don't know exactly how it'll work yet, but I suspect, let's say Unit 1 will have Unit 1 spot, and Unit 1 can park in Unit 1 spot. And I would imagine that's how it will work for underneath there.
So there's 30 units to that?
There's actually 40, so it is not perfect. It's not perfectly proportional of underground parking to units, but it was the most that we could fit underneath the building. And then I may add, I did skip over landscaping, like we will comply with all of Laconia's landscaping requirements, and landscaping is great to minimize large parking areas where we can shield it from the public right away the best we can. It also provides shade trees in the summertime, and we'll do the best. And there is landscaping shown on the architectural rendering, but I don't have it on our plan just yet.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Thank you for the presentation. My questions may be better addressed by the architect, if you, I think you mentioned this.
I know you said you didn't like public speaking.
There's a couple quick questions.
I'm just
I don't
more
wanna put you on the
comfortable with the
spot.
zoning board, but that's fine.
The rendering appears to be a two-story building, is that accurate?
No, so, there's a window here, window here, window here, window here. They're sort of grouped, so that you want to, the massing of this building is very, very simple. It's a box that's extruded. So there's different tools that an architect can use to kind of alleviate the boredom of just an extruded box. And one of the things that we do is we play with the exterior to try to break down the massing. And so we've grouped 2 stories and 2 stories together.
So a 4-story building then?
It is a 4-story building with the 5th being the underground. You can kind of see the entrance to the parking. You go down where there's 30 spots.
And
as
the
Sam
height of
noted.
the building then will be 48 feet, 40 something?
It will comply. I don't know the
Comply.
exact height off the top of my head.
I
But
would
I
say
think it's more, what
55,
do we say,
but
12 to
top of
12
my head.
foot, 11 for, yeah, 52 feet, 11 foot
60,
for, floor-to-floor height.
Yeah, that
Gotcha,
zone is
gotcha.
65,
Yeah.
so
60 feet, I believe, is the...
60 feet, yeah. I'm
Um,
not worried about the height.
So, will this be one or 2 bedroom units or a mix?
So right now, I've got 39 2-bedroom units, 2-bedroom, mostly 2-bathroom, and 1 1-bedroom unit. So the goal is really to have 2-bedroom units. And this benefits both the people who will buy the condos. I think people will prefer more than 1 bedroom. It also benefits the employees. A lot of their employees might have spouses, families, or some just want to have a roommate. So it's been considered that if we could fit 2 bedrooms throughout the entire building, let's do that. However, the lobby, that square footage needs to come out of somewhere. So we had to chop off a bedroom
Gotcha.
in order to comply.
Given the proposed use of the building, would you consider, in terms of affordability, would this be considered workforce housing?
I can't really speak to that, but the owners here, the 10 units that would be for their employees.
Yeah, so I think what we want to do is, with the units that are the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor of the residential piece, those we would sell off, and we would actually restrict, so if one of you bought one of those units, you would be subject to our condo rules, and there will not be daily, nightly, or weekly rentals. It's not going to happen. So, the units, the 10 units that are on that first level, we would keep them for employee housing, rather than call it workforce. So if we call it workforce, and so I'm a big proponent of workforce housing. We own 10 restaurants, Copper Door, T-Bones, Cactus Jacks. In Bedford alone, we have 250 apartments that we own. We have a lot of employees that we house in there, not just from the Bedford locations, but from all over. And those are 2 workforce units. We're very supportive of that. The concern is if we're going to sell those units, is there some stigma that comes with that? So what we would suggest to the board is we know what the requirements are, from a application process for income levels. We really are intending on those units for our employees, not for, that's really what we want to use them for. If there were units that were vacant, in talking to the mayor of the city, I know that there are needs for city employees. So we would, before we went out to the public, I think we would be able to fill those quite efficiently, either with our employees or maybe folks that work here in Laconia. We're very mindful of what those rents are going to be. Our goal is to sell the majority units, recoup all of our money, and then whatever we get in rents, it's irrelevant to us. These units are there to help support our restaurant. Our restaurant are important for us. It's never been parked properly. That's on us, and we've rented spaces across the street, down the street. wherever we could get them. And when Friendly's came up, we joked that was the most expensive parking lot. For $1 million, we bought a parking lot. And then it was a question is, what do we do with it? And if we put another restaurant there, we thought about that, maybe breakfast or lunch. We had to be very cognizant, we can't chew up the parking that we just bought. So then we started thinking, what's the other biggest need besides parking, and it's housing. And so that's kind of what has got us going on this thing in early fall. So that's where we are. So I would also say that for those lower units, I mean, they're gonna be condos, and I'm telling you, we're gonna rent them, but what happens if I get hit by a truck? So we're happy to put in their restriction that those will not be sold for at least a decade. Like there is zero intention of selling those. Those are there to help support the restaurant, and period. So, you know, most people don't volunteer that. We're happy to volunteer it because there's no hidden agenda here. We're doing this project to give ourselves more parking and to have a place for our employees to live. So it's that simple. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but.
Very good, thank you. Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do
Right.
we have a viewpoint of what this would look like from the water?
We don't. We put this rendering together on a short timetable, so that's why it was focused on this view from, essentially you're standing in the axis, you're essentially, it looks like you're standing about here, looking this way.
Okay. So I guess I'm struggling to see, I'm looking at a window, am I seeing entrance doors beyond that, or, I guess I'm trying to figure out what I'm.
You want me to bring it up closer, or?
It's also, this is so early in the design process that it is a little intentionally vague. Because as so we're in the conceptual design, as we move into the traditional design phases of architecture, then we start adding the information, you know, you've got the structural, the mechanical, and we work with our construction manager to make sure that we're on budget, and this vision slowly becomes much more clear. But essentially, and it's funny, when I first rendered this, I had a tree right here, and it totally blocked half the building. So I chopped down the tree. So now we can see, here is the entry. So you enter into a main lobby here, and that's how all of the units would be accessed. I also envision there's an elevator in the building, that if you park down below, you can access the elevator from that lower level parking as well, which if you're handicapped, some sort of mobility impairment, that would be ideal for you. So you're not gonna see any other doors. And it's a great question about what would it look like on the backside. There's a bunch of balconies. So the units that face the lake are a little bit more square footage. And one of the reasons for that is because we inset a nice little outdoor space, because who wouldn't want a lovely view of Paugus Bay? And I'm told it's Paugus, not Pagus.
It's August.
Okay, so I passed that test.
I failed that test.
That's it.
Mr. Chairman,
You're good.
how many stairwells? I'm sorry I was late getting back, but
There will be two. It will be.
one on each end?
Yep, code compliant. Right now, I've got the stairwells. You see where the building sets in, and you see this sort of dark sliver here?
Yeah.
I've got the stairwells there, and I pushed them to the front, or the parking lot side of the building, so that we could prioritize the square footage with the lake view, because that will make more money in return, so that we can build this workforce housing for the restaurant. But also, in doing so, you get natural light in the stairwell, which sounds nice to me. Oftentimes, they're squeezed in the center of the building, and then the units get the priority of the daylight. But in this case, these little windows, right now, in the design right now, are the stairwell, two stairwells.
And what type of roof?
It's a flat roof.
It is flat.
We have the building height restrictions that we have to comply with, and also that's a really great way to catch water and have it drain into the system. There's overflow pipes. It's a really efficient way to do it. When you have a building as high as this and as big as this, and then you have a sloped roof, you're inviting trouble. Think of icicles, think of water running off. The flat roof,
I'm thinking of snow.
and you're thinking snow. That's fair. Next month's April.
I think I would want to see like something to address the scale of the building, how it looks on the front.
When you say scale, are you talking height scale or width?
Well, I know
Yes.
the building will be at the height that it's going to be. and that's what's necessary to get all the units in there. But still, I think typically most people in this town are not gonna like the the look of this and how big it looks, especially on that street compared to everything else. So, like, if there's gonna be some kind of design element to kind of reduce the feel of the height of that building, that would be.
And that's very astute of you to point out, because with the 4-story building, that's nothing but an extruded box.
Yeah.
It is hard to break down the massing and the scale. And I'll also share with you that this design will be in flux, and the next time we come back to them a couple of times.
We'll be going through the TRC process, so we'll be more with town staff beforehand. But I don't know if there's a benefit to coming before the board to update you on the process. We'd be happy to do that. And I guess we'll work with you on that process.
The image right now is really just kind of showing a hardy board and a metal panel. So this is a board and batten. Think about barn siding, that nice vertical board and batten. And then this is a dark metal panel. And right now we're showing it as white and a dark gray. I think that the client has expressed some color would be nice, some softening of the edges would be nice. And so this is merely the first design iteration of several more to come. So I think, and when we address that, Mr. Joseph, I think that we'll also talk about scale and how we break it down. And I do think that this angle doesn't necessarily show you exactly how scale starts to be addressed in this design. There's other angles, but given the limited time, I only had time for one rendering.
Some additional trees will help. The
Yeah.
tree that we removed.
Draw back in the one that I took out. Yes, certainly.
Other than the Friendly's building, what's on that lot now on the surface?
It's Friendly's and parking area. So the majority of the site is parking. It's approximately about right here. So we're pretty much maintaining the existing footprint. Like, so this is all Friendly's parking area.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to get at is how much additional pavement are you putting there?
I'm really increasing the impervious area. When I checked before this conceptual area is about 6,000 square feet. So it's really,
And about how much is there now?
I don't know how much there is now, but it's an increase of about 6,000 square feet, and I'd have to confirm that number. When an acre is 43,000 square feet, so I would constitute as minor compared to the overall 2.5 acres.
So you said you're moving the Friendlies, or are you?
The Friendlies is being raised, so it's being demolished.
Okay.
Yeah, like, so that, I mean, the Friendlies sat right here, so.
Right.
Yep.
I was confused because earlier you said you were moving it.
I'm relocating the Friendlies entrance, so there is a
Oh,
full
okay.
access here, and I'm just moving it further away to make the parking more efficient.
Oh, okay.
And does T-Bones have any plans on expanding the restaurant?
I don't know if they can. I don't know if they have the room to expand the restaurant, especially with their parking capacity at this point in time.
That could go up.
Because we don't mind parking under a deck if they want to do more
Hint,
outdoor.
hint.
Yeah. You want to sit and overlook the lake. That's
I mean,
what
I
you're
was
looking
having
for.
a heart attack when
Yeah.
I saw T-Bones and you said, I thought they were leaving and
I don't think they're going anywhere. We'll talk to them to see if they can put a deck on there.
Parking lot?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
got worried.
Let me ask you a question. So you're putting in, what, 39 units, 40 units?
40 units.
All right, so according to our code, then we'll go with 40, even though it may be 39. So according to our code, with 40 units, you would need 60 spaces.
Yes.
Okay. How many spaces are you proposing? You've got 30 underneath, plus how many more on the outside?
So we're at a total of 175 minus 30, so we're about 145 on the outside.
So there's 145 outside, 30.
And 95 were just on the T-bones alone. So I would say even external, you're probably still close to mimicking the existing parking. So yeah, we're increasing the parking by quite a bit, but external to the building, it's probably similar to the existing.
What I'm trying to think in my mind, I'm gonna tell you honestly, what I got going in my head is a Joni Mitchell song from the late 60s. That's basically, they paved paradise and put up raised paradise and put up a parking lot. It's a lot of parking, it's a lot of pavement, and it's close to the water. And that's, at this point in time, that's all I'm gonna say. I guess I'm trying to figure out how much you need for the housing, which we do desperately need, and I'm grateful for that. And how much you really need for the restaurant. And if you could reduce the number to what you really think you're gonna need for the restaurant, plus what you mandatorily need right now according to our parking code, and leave the rest of it unpaved, would be,
Just a little bit more green space is what you're looking for?
just a little bit more green space, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And that's, in that area, it's, you know, and that's why I asked the question, because it just seems like a big parking lot.
On the two lots, we are at about 25% green space, and that does include like parking islands and landscape buffers in the front and everything like that. I know this isn't gonna put you at ease, but the requirement is 10%, so we are.
I understand that, yeah.
Yep.
So actually, if you really focused on additional landscaping in front of the building, that could catch quite a bit of the runoff going toward.
Yeah, so we'll put landscaping in between the right-of-way and the front parking.
But I
area.
mean, in front
She
of your,
means in front of the building.
the new housing.
Right here?
If there was an abundance of landscaping there, not only to hide the building a little bit, give them some privacy from a parking lot.
Yep.
It would also soak up a lot of,
Yeah, and this is green space right here. It doesn't look like it's green because you're seeing the aerial behind the image, so this right here is green space in between the building and the parking. And there will be whatever trees we can fit within that area, as well as shrubbery and landscaping beds. However, adding landscaping really won't lower the runoff rate compared to a grassed area that significantly. It will, like there will be a reduction in runoff from putting a tree there versus grassed area, but our stormwater management system will do most of the reduction in the runoff.
now will some condo owners have only a view of the parking lot, or will they have both?
Some will only have view of the parking lot, so I believe it's split in half, so half face the parking lot and half face the lake.
Okay.
With the corner units as probably the exception to that, where you can look a little bit sideways, but
So what is the depth of that building right now?
I think 65 feet?
Going towards the water.
Yeah, so this is 65 feet this way. Do you know the width?
165 maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Where would the children play?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of getting, there's a lot of pavement here. That's just what I'm getting at. I understand you need parking. I get that's the whole purpose of this.
It's also 2-bedroom housing, so.
But it's Union Avenue, and there's not much we can do about that anyway.
How many people buy housing with children on Union Avenue to begin with?
Well, I'm just saying that there's going to be 30 condos there, and they're going to be next to a bar restaurant.
Let's talk about 51 Elm.
Well, you know, I'm not here to compare projects. I'm just, I don't have a problem with the building. I really like the building. I don't know, I'd like to see you keep it as an apartment building rather than going condo, because that automatically closes out a lot of people from the market that really do need a house that can't afford to, for one reason or another, just aren't gonna qualify for a mortgage to buy a condominium. We did go through that once, okay? And since you're gonna rent some of it, but that's your business plan, and I'm not gonna mess with that. I mean, if you think you can sell them with those restrictions in that part of Laconia, okay, if that's what you think you can do. But preferably, I would like to see the parking lot size reduced to what's absolutely needed as far as maintaining the business as it is and expanding that parking, plus providing the parking that we require for that many units.
So let me,
And maybe I'm just looking at it thinking, wow, that's a big parking lot, but.
so, yeah, going back in time, when we first came up with the housing idea, I asked Sam, what can we put on there? And the number's a lot more than 40. But we had to back into so the first thing, the most important thing is we need parking for T-Bones,
I understand
period.
that, and that's why you bought the lot.
And so to maintain the number of spaces that we use today, either on-site or in leases, the 40 is a number we backed into. So, I mean, I'd love to put 60 units there. And, you know, we are talking to neighbors about maybe working something out to where we could, the housing's important to us, but we could only build the number of units with the excess parking that
No, I understand.
would be there.
Yeah,
And that's,
no, I get
and it
that.
wasn't, if I could do 60 units, I'd do it tomorrow, and I'd have more for the employees. It just, we kind of backed ourselves into where we are based on what the restaurant needs were first, and then whatever use we had there was ancillary to that. And, you know, if we can figure out a way to have less asphalt, we'll certainly do that, but we're certainly constrained by the needs of the business first.
No, and I understand that's why you bought the lot.
Yeah, and pavement's expensive. No one wants to build more than what they need. It's.
Well, it is, it's also, okay, I guess, I mean, I don't really have a problem with adding the housing. If it was up to me, yeah, I'd go 2 stories higher. I'm not worried about the height. I'm not. I mean, no, I mean, I'm not.
She's not on the
We're a
zoning board,
city.
that's all.
This is a city, that's a commercial zone. Go as high as you want, put as many as you can, just gotta provide the right parking for them. I mean, the height is insignificant to me.
We build more, then we don't have the parking.
I understand that. No, I do get that. You know what I mean, but like I said, any way you could keep 2 floors apartments and 2 floors condo?
It really comes down to what we can, what our costs are.
What your costs are gonna be. Okay, all right. It's your project. That's all I can say. I'm just looking at it. It just seems like a lot of paper.
counselor would like to speak.
I just would like to point out that we have had, and I mean no disparagement. I want the department to be sure all of these conditions are in writing. We failed to do that on other projects and paid the price. Oh, we're gonna do this. And I don't mean to disparage these folks at all. They make some of the best food in the city. So I gotta be really careful. I don't wanna get thrown out.
name
But I
Roast
want to
Genie?
see, please, before you come back to us, be sure that we've, you know, whatever promises they're gonna make are promises made in writing. And he's,
We expect them to be part of the conditions of approval.
and thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I have no reason to question you, except you drop dead and Harry Cafointon takes over and he says whatever he says. So I'd like it.
You got it.
I would appreciate that too, because there's nothing worse than picking up an old project and someone thinks easements are in place and there's no easement documents to refer to of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. So it simplifies my job in the future of having all that stuff in writing and solid before plans are signed final.
We will work with them during the TRC process to make sure we have
And-
all those ironed out.
I'm just saying, I don't doubt you or them at all. I just want, when we get to the far end, it's in black and white, so we don't find out that rental units have suddenly become condo units or vice versa. Okay?
My question would be for Rob or Scott, I guess.
Can you speak into the mic?
With 40 units, 40 residential units, you tell me they only need 10% green space?
The 10% green space comes from the urban commercial district. And that doesn't, that's not, and that's not variable, like that's not dependent on density requirements. That's just a flat standard.
And you're keeping 25%
25,
green space.
yep.
How much is there about now? About the same?
It's probably about the same, because again, we're only adding roughly 6,000 square feet of impervious area, which the building I think ends up being like 12,000 square foot footprint.
Then I'm with Bruce. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to see the bottom 2 floors held as apartments and the top 2 floors gone as condo, but that may not be workable financially.
If it is, trust me,
Do you know what I mean? I mean, and that's your business plan, that you have to do that with your lenders and your bankers and all that other stuff, and I don't wanna micromanage that, that's not why I'm here, but I agree with Bruce, you know.
What you determine, forgive me, what you determine to be what you want this project to be, I want to see that in writing.
Right.
Fair enough.
Fair enough?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, board, for your time, and we look forward to working with staff through the TRC process.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
This one's mine. With that whole easel.
Clearly.
That's the existing conditions of it.
Oh, okay. You know, like I said, I was just a
May I?
little overwhelmed by.
Which was submitted with the application, so there should be a PDF of it.
First, by the way, we're Bruce.
The only
we're
thing I have
taking
is
these.
this.
I always have.
But you can see that. Thank you.
And the paper clips too.
Thank you, appreciate it.
We're going to 911.
Listen, what is happening here?
Well, I don't know, I thought we were saving them for the next time.
We don't have an architectural review. and stuff.
You have so many.
All right.
Got it?
Yeah, I got all my stuff. What am I doing first here? I am doing a sign from that.
It has to be very cheap. Someone's gonna buy.
The whole thing should have.
All right, so next we'll have 9.1,
Presentation.
a presentation for
Right.
table and signs and regulations.
Correct. So, back on May 7th, 2019, the planning board amended the zoning map to adopt the urban commercial district. Then, on March 3rd, 2020, we went back to planning board and we adopted updated tables for uses and dimensional standards. Absent from that was the table of sign requirements, regulations. So since 2019, we have not had updated tables for the sign regulations, adopting the urban commercial district, which was revised back at the time, but for some reason, never made it to planning board to be adopted or to be reviewed. So, in your packet, I have attached the currently approved table of sign regulations, which on the top of it, you'll see there's the old professional, the building, the business central, and the business central industrial zones in the downtown riverfront district on the table, which we no longer have those zoning districts anymore. And then on the updated chart, you'll see that we combined the commercial and the urban commercial districts. And then we imposed the strictest of the conditions from the condensed zones that were incorporated into the urban commercial district. But that was never actually adopted. And then, and you see on the updated table, note 13, they added in there some language which preserved some of the downtown riverfront district's regulations on having some more aesthetically pleasing signs in the downtown district, which would be a little bit smaller, kind of preserving the character of the downtown characteristics. But this was never updated. So I'm here before you tonight to ask what you would like to do with this, whether we should update this or use what was updated in 2019 but never adopted, and how you would like to move forward with that.
So a couple of these zones were combined then, is what I'm hearing you say,
Yep, so back in
A-
2019, we created the urban commercial district, which, as you see, it ran all the way from the Belmont line all the way up through to Guilford there, and then incorporated the TIFs of the downtown and the Lakeport TIF. And then, so that incorporated all of those 4 other zoning districts and a good portion of the commercial district. But we've never actually adopted a sign regulation for that zoning district.
So that now appears as C and UC,
Correct.
commercial and urban?
In the urban commercial, yep. Because the commercial and the urban commercial were so very similar when they were updated, and they incorporated a lot of the same areas. It's just that downtown riverfront district that was, that we added note 13 in, that was just this downtown area, Beacon Street and Pleasant Street and Canal Street, that we wanted to preserve, having slightly smaller sign requirements to preserve the character. But that was never officially updated. So I'm here before you we found this error, and we're just looking to get it fixed in the best way that the board would like to move forward with that.
So are the, the downtown river requirements still incorporated into this up?
Right, so when we combined urban commercial and the commercial in the new sign, it should have taken the most stringent of those requirements.
Into consideration. And they're adopted into that? Okay, so they're still preserved?
So we're still
in this-
preserving them, yep.
Okay.
So these are things we've already been doing, we just never actually approved them?
Correct.
So you just need us to say it's approved?
No, well, I want you to give me your input, whether you think this is the right way to do it, and then we move forward with it, or if you look at it and you're like, we want to make some changes to it, and then propose some of those changes, and I'll go back and revise it and come back before you. Or if you are happy with what it is, we could approve it. I'm flexible to whatever the board envisions doing. I just want to make sure that we're correcting the discrepancy to move forward in the best possible way.
Well, without going through each and every one of these and contemplate, I mean, are there any revisions you would ask us to consider?
Currently, not now. I think we've had some pretty good success in how it's been run right now. Scott's been running it for a long time, and I don't think he's run across any errors. I think the biggest problem we have with signs is not with the table itself, but within the regulation itself. And I think that we, as an organization, as a community, should probably look at our sign regulation and perhaps think about amending that in the future to add in a little bit more flexibility. But that's separate than the table.
Very good, very good.
How about adding street numbers to the signs, mandatory?
So that is not on the table. That would be in the sign regulation itself.
So we're just looking at the table right now.
Right, this is just for the table.
Just for the
Yeah.
table, I see.
If the
what you're
board would like to amend the sign ordinance, we can do the sign ordinance.
saying.
That's,
But that's a separate issue.
but that's a separate thing. If that's something that you would like me to review and bring back to you, I'd be more than happy to do that.
I just think if somebody's putting a sign up for their business, you should be able to see the address of that property from the road.
If I might add, I think 911 requires that. Statutory language requires that it be visible.
Okay, I can,
I know, but I was looking for 492 Endicott today, and I couldn't find the
Oh,
damn sign anywhere.
I understand perfectly. What I'm saying to
Do
you
that online.
is, it's a requirement, so he can
Yeah.
insist on numbers being displayed. One of the problems that the city had, if I might just, because I had a little bit of experience with this, 911 came to the city and said, we'll help you map the city and address every structure in the city. And at the time, we were told, no, we'll take care of it ourselves. So there are places in the city where addresses are every 20 feet, other places where they're every 50 feet, and some places where they're every 100 feet. 911 recommends one setting. We generally say 50-foot stretch, or have had, but immaterial. The statute requires that every structure be addressed.
Right.
So I'm in agreement with you that it
And I
should
know
be
that,
required.
some signs have, at the top or at the bottom, they have,
Yep.
You know,
I
four
think that,
ninety-two or?
I think the advisability of what he's suggesting is, it gives you the ability to say, it's a city ordinance.
Okay,
Never mind city, state law.
If you'd like, I can bring that back. We can do research and we can validate the RSA and bring back, so we incorporate that exact language into our ordinance.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, you know, on all the years I sat on the zoning board, and Mike was with me, we got a flurry, after the sign ordinance was passed, we got a flurry of requests, but I don't recall, I don't know that we've had any in the last couple of years. We've had one or two, one wouldn't fit into this, it had to do with an existing sign that somebody wanted to use up in the weirs. It doesn't factor into this particular thing at all. I guess what I'm saying is everything we're trying to do here is consistent, and it's fairly consistent with really what's out there, other than what would be grandfathered.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense then.
So, I'm Parks and Rec, and I have no idea what this means.
Oh, so table of
So
regulations.
I would like to have the opportunity to sit down with you guys and find out what in the hell this is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't understand it. Do you guys understand this?
Listen, that was my next comment.
Thank
Would you
you.
next time say P1 is?
Oh,
what the-
This means this.
Just so
So,
those of us who are
I know
old.
R2D2. I just,
I agree.
Oh my God.
I agree, because now as I've moved on in life, I have glasses now, and I also find it difficult coming down reading the fine print at the bottom.
Yep.
So I agree with you. We will find a better way of
Thank you.
presenting that. So we will absolutely take that consideration.
and I just don't want to say anything until I've had the opportunity to
No, that
understand it.
all I'm looking to do is present this information to the board, get some feedback, and make it right. And whatever we need to do,
Okay.
make everything right, and do the best thing possible. I am 100% supporting.
Sounds great.
So we can absolutely make those changes.
required for this, or, because
We can, if
We
you would
table
like,
this then?
we can just
Yeah.
table it till next month
you
with
wanna
your
make-
feedback,
So I can.
and then we can
yeah.
come back next month and readdress.
And you can come back with the address stuff at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely, we can do that.
Just so I know that I'm reading it right. For example, we have projecting.
Are you showing off?
I just want to make sure I'm reading it right.
Yes,
Projecting, it says P with 5 in parentheses.
yep,
Does that mean that number 5 is the only permissible use?
It's a size.
so, right, so that 5 is that note down at the bottom that says maximum size of 18 square feet.
Correct.
So of that, so if you have a projecting sign, your projecting sign can only be a maximum of 18 square feet, regardless of what your maximum square foot allowance is for the property.
So, number 5 only.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
You could-
permitted if you
there's-
go to number 5, and that tells you what your restrictions are. That's your maximum sign size.
Yep.
So in other words, if it says P parentheses 9, Stacy, you go down to the bottom, and what you're seeing is a canopy, P9, and you drag it over. So a canopy in single-family resort area, single-family SFR, shorefront residential, for example, is P9, which means the maximum amount of size that is calculated as the face of a wall sign, which makes no sense.
Thank you.
So then you gotta refer to another point in there for the wall sign to find out that it is really this
Probably
number.
a bad example, sorry.
Well,
Don't go 9.
But
I
that's
am
how you
reading
So
would
we,
read it.
we in the planning department also agree with you, because it is also time consuming for us to look at this and be like, oh my God,
We don't get it.
this is, all right, CP5 to C number 4 to then come out to this calculation over here. And then you're doing math to remove that from this, to look at this total size. So it is a lot of fun.
And then when it comes to the zoning board, we're forced to drink before we go to the meeting, because we just, I can remember in 2014,
Oh,
when
no.
they were
No
originally
stories.
redoing the
It's
whole
8
sign
p.m.
ordinance, I thought Michael Kitch was gonna jump off a wall.
I
'cause
didn't know
he
we
had
were
to-
allowed to
Alright.
drink before.
All right, all right.
dig in.
Okay.
So,
So since we have a motion, we can make a motion.
Yes,
but-
I'll make that motion to table for next meeting.
I'll second it.
All right. All the yeas? All right, thank you.
All right, so the next one is for unsafe structures. So on February 12th, City Council voted to pursue or suggest that the planning board look at the adoption of unsafe structures and incorporate it into our zoning ordinance. And I'll just read it to you. No owner or occupant of land in any district shall permit fire or other ruins to be left indefinitely, but will within 6 months remove or refill the same clear ground level, or shall initiate repair of the structure. So this was pulled right from our legal opinion, our legal team, of the best practice to incorporate into our zoning ordinance to safeguard the community from burnt out structures. And the best example I have that is the Bay Street building. And this is the ordinance that we want to adopt to protect the city from that reoccurrence.
Yeah, the only thing that I will caution you on, and this is a one-off, but I went through this many years ago. There was a bar up in the Weirs called the Wide Open Saloon that burned one night. It's
Twice.
parking lot now.
But the
That's
horses
actually
all
what
got
I was
away.
thinking.
But the
They
horses
did,
got
they
away.
did. It was wide
You
open.
remember that fire? It was a hell of a fire, anyway.
Wide open.
But my point I'm trying to make with this and the 6 months and the drop dead thing is, while well-intended, it took the insurance companies and the fire marshal, the state fire marshal, almost 3 years, and the city ended up in court over it, to actually render a decision
Yeah.
as to the fire marshal wouldn't allow the building to be torn down unless the investigation was complete. And there has never been an investigation into a major arson anywhere that has taken 6 months, a shortest period of time is 6 months, because New Hampshire Fire Marshal are well-intended, but they are not well-staffed like the rest of the state. So I'm saying, you have the potential to run into a conflict if there's a police process going on, is what I'm saying, because in a major case like an arson, they're very rarely concluded with the insurance company. And it's
But
the
wouldn't that
insurance
just
company.
be a waiver?
And you'd have to, but I'm saying there would have to be a process, a waiver process, whereby a homeowner could come and say, the insurance company, I don't have the clearance from the fire department through the insurance company, because it's the insurance company that pays for the removal of the debris. That's part of your insurance claim, and they don't move this fast in 6 months. Unfortunately, it's bad for us. But I'm saying in practicality, and Bruce was on the job for a very long time, these things do move kind of slow.
Right,
Could we
but
say
you know-
could we say something along the lines of, 2 months after the conclusion of the investigation, or?
And that could.
So usually how the city pursues enforcement is we reach out to somebody, and once they've hit that, for instance, 6 month mark, and they're gonna come back and they're gonna say, listen, this is what's going on. And at that point, the city is like, are we gonna pursue this? Do we take are we gonna give them more time? So our enforcement action can be slowed with input from the property owner. And there's also regulations within our ordinance that if this is being investigated for this, that would supersede the zoning
Okay,
ordinance.
all right, then
Yeah.
as long as there's an escape valve, because theoretically, all fires are crime scenes until somebody says they're not. And that's the way the police will approach them, that's why they stay roped off, and then obviously 99% of the time or 95% of the time, the fire department gets in there and says, this was electrical, this was accidental. Every now and then, there's that gray area, and then it starts to bog down. And the insurance companies won't do anything until they have a determination from either the fire chief or the fire marshal. And sometimes that can take a period of time. But if there's an escape valve, then I'm fine with this, because I don't want to see a bunch of burned out buildings or
I wonder if we
decrepit
could
buildings.
say something along the lines of 60 days after determination of the cause of the fire.
Not cause, but yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't know the words we'd use, but yeah,
Something along those lines.
something along
to
those
get-
lines.
I mean,
Because
as a practical matter, I would suggest to you, Gail, that if I owned a piece of property that had not been adjudicated as a accidental fire or whatever, and the city was breathing down my neck, I'd go to court and get a stop order.
And what happened is, in this particular case, is the fire marshal basically came back with the fire department and said, we don't have a cause yet, and this is still an open investigation.
I understand, and if you go to a court and say, I'm not unwilling to tear this down, I can't until it's been determined. So,
And
I
it's-
think there are several ways that a person could avoid being unfairly treated. But don't
Yeah, I
think it
sense
would-
there's,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I sense that there's already a mechanism for, like, for these cases. I don't see
There's
why.
always a one-off, and maybe we should just go with what generally happens
Yeah.
and let the one-offs, you know.
Think about it.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
The planning director indicated that this was vetted by the city's legal department. Given that, I have confidence in adopting it. Any revisions that we might consider should probably go back to legal for review.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we don't want to overwrite the law. I mean, I think that they're probably just weighing in on the basic wording of the ordinance.
Well, if you like, I can take those questions that we've posed tonight and go back and I can follow up and then come back next month and we can.
Because I don't know what happened over on Bay Street. I know it burned. I don't know who owns it. I don't know what the insurance situation was.
I don't believe there was any insurance, that's why
Was
it
that
sat
the
there.
problem?
I believe so, that's what I heard on the street.
You know, and that could be
Ask
why
them
it's
what they
still
think.
there.
If they think we hadn't ought to mess with it,
That's 3,000
we'll go forward with this. If they can see a way to
Brave.
You got it. I will validate with legal
Yeah, and I
and we
would
can
ask the
table it.
fire chief, and I would also ask the fire chief how long these things usually take to play out, because it really, once it becomes an arson, it kind of quasi stays in the hands of the local people, but it doesn't. It goes to the state fire marshal.
And maybe they might have, I mean, it might be worth talking to first before going
Yeah.
to
I would tell
legal.
you that
Because they might have some input in terms of how. these things-
Interestingly enough, the current fire chief and the now city manager
Oh, that's right.
reviewed this in their determination.
Yes.
And this was
Because
their,
then they become hazards.
and this
they
was
don't
their
like the
suggestion
hazards, yeah.
that went to
the
legal.
fire marshal is the one, the fire chief is the one who brought it to the city council.
Oh, okay, well, then I'm comfortable with it. If the fire chief thinks that 99% of the time, something can be rectified within a 6-month period, he knows that. That's his job, so.
Well, then let's
I'm
vote
good
on
with
it tonight.
Motion made to approve.
So is that to approve it, to send it
As
for
is.
a public hearing for next month at planning board
Okay.
for adoption? Perfect.
That's what she meant.
That's what you meant, yeah.
All right. We got,
So-
we have the yeas,
All
so.
Was there a
Public
vote?
hearing?
Okay,
So do we
I
need
agree.
to?
I agree.
So we do
Yeah.
need a,
Oh, okay, all
If
right.
this came from the fire department, then never mind, that's what.
I'm sorry, we're gonna vote now? Okay.
Here,
Let's start with that next time.
Bruce, hold your arm up, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
We got it. anyways.
don't go anywhere.
All right,
Is there
Tyler.
one more?
I'm going to turn this next
Everybody
presentation
knows
over
that.
to
Yeah.
our new assistant planner, who has done an exceptional amount of research on impact fees.
We just keep losing people on
Really?
the planning
That's
board.
how we lose people. We want retention here. Give them something fun. I tried.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to talk to you today about impact fees. And I just kind of wanted to give you a little overview of how the impact fees currently work, where we get our authorization from, and then dive into the actual review portion. We have handed out kind of like a summary sheet that goes in, and I won't read it verbatim, but you can see, we do have the authority to assess the impact fees by the state because we have an innovative land use zoning ordinance. And then the city code authorizes the planning board to assess the fees in accordance with the code. And we have standards set. As long as the board is assessing fees in accordance with those standards, we're golden, we're good to go. And then you can move on down through there and see the different standards that we have outlined in ordinance. It has to be proportional share, reasonably related, 60% of impact fees for that. But the board has to determine that it is affordable housing in accordance with the RSA, the state definition of affordable housing. But that is the board's discretion to do so. The board can also waive fees for a developer if they are proposing contributions to capital projects as well. You could waive up to 100% of the fees should the board determine that the capital improvements that the developer is making equals or is more than the impact fees assessed. And then the last one is the board may waive up to 80% of the impact fees for assessed property if the board determines that the project is 100% infill, rehab, and reuse. So those are currently the three relief options we have for impact fees, which I know has come up previously. And again, these are all at the board's discretion. The board can also discuss impact fees during conceptual and design reviews, but you can't actually waive impact fees until the application comes before you to approve. Obviously, there's an appeals mechanism in place. If people don't agree with our impact fees, they can follow the proper procedure laid out in state statute. The current foundation for our impact fees actually comes from an assessment done in 2009. So that was the last time a company actually came in, assessed the impact that individual developments have on public structures. And I've listed that out. It's actually stated in the city ordinance which assessment we are using for those impact fees. When the original impact fee schedule was adopted in 2011, the board and city council decided that we were only going to assess 25% of the actual impact that developments have on the communities. So if you look, there should be two tables available to you. There's the first table, which is what's currently in effect. It says Laconia Impact Fee Schedule adopted 9/27/21. That went into effect on 4/1/2022. So that's currently what we are using when assessing impact fees. And when you look at this schedule, on the far right, it'll say total fee schedule, and it'll have dollar figures there. So for example, single family detached, the impact fee is $7,629.61. Now that is what the assessment that was done in 2009 said that was the total impact a single family home was going to have on public structures. But when the original fee schedule was adopted, city council approved the impact fee ordinance at a 25% rate. So we were only collecting 25% of that total assessed impact fee. And then come September 27th of 21, the city council approved an increase in impact fee. So they updated the ordinance and increased it from 25% to 50%. So currently we are only collecting 50% of the total value that the original assessment said that these developments have on our community. Now, the board is supposed to review these annually.
Oops.
Yeah, you don't have to make changes to them annually, but you should be reviewing them annually to see what we're currently using. And if the board decides there needs to be any changes, the board is free to recommend those changes. Currently, the city ordinance says that the board must review the values and assessment levels by July 1st, 2025. So we have some time before we miss that deadline. And, yes, go ahead.
Does that mean you have to redo that assessment?
So the board does not have to redo the assessment. The board just has to have a method in place to determine what the assessed values are. So if the board so chose, they could request that a new assessment be completed.
That can be done at any time, right?
What was that? I'm sorry?
Can that be done at any time?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the board is concerned, it's whenever the board feels like it, yeah.
So, yes, so the board could make a request to do a new analysis for impact fees. So we would have to bring that request to city council to get the funding to go out, to have somebody come in and do the review and assess everything, and then bring us back a report and do that.
Well, if it's not been done since 2009, I would think that we would want something like that to be done.
Well, I did drum up kind of a quick consumer price index adjustment to show you the impact of inflation just from 2009 to today. So on that second chart that I provided, the CPI adjusted chart, you can see it's a considerable increase in the assessed value. So we jumped up, I believe it's roughly 37% from inflation from 2009 to today, this year. So even if we just left it at, we're only collecting 50% of the total impact that developments have on the community, that would still increase a significant amount just by inflation alone. Now, with that said, that's not factoring in changes to the school system, changes to any of the demographics that the city currently has that are different from what it was in 2009, which is where an assessment would come into play. It would look at all those changes and reevaluate those numbers while also taking inflation into account, so in current prices. And you can also see, too, the capital facilities that are currently, we are currently assessing impact fees for. So we are just assessing fees for public schools, police, fire, recreation, roads, and library. There are other capital facilities that we could potentially assess for. Those are laid out in state law, such as sanitary sewer and water as well. But the original assessment did not factor in those prices,
Should probably be included.
facilities.
I have just one question.
Sure.
In the roads portion, that includes sidewalks too, right?
It goes
I'm
to
not
DPW.
entirely
It goes to the
sure about that, but I can look into that and find out.
Because, well, I mean, we've had some requests of waiving sidewalks. And there was also a suggestion made one time, I think it was to this board, by the Public Works Director, that what he would like, and I guess this would have to be some kind of a revolving fund that would be expended at the behest of the city council, is to collect all of the fees associated with sidewalks and put them into one fund to be spent to start to gradually extend, so we can stop the sidewalks to nowhere and leave it, but build out our sidewalking network, which was crucial in the Weirs, is where, as we got another project going in up at the Weirs that's, again, not gonna be connected to the Weirs at the paintball place by a sidewalk.
Right.
Now, there are provisions that we can collect that, but what Wes wanted, and I didn't think it was such a bad idea, was rather than having these segments of sidewalks built, that money went into some kind of a reserve fund, and that fund would obviously have to be expended by the city council and with the input from Public Works as to where we want our sidewalks to extend to.
I think the council's understanding is a developer has the choice of putting in sidewalks or paying the cost of that.
Yes, so that we were working on a sidewalk report to present to the board for next month.
Oh, okay, all right, so this is something in the works. I know you've only been around.
So we're working on, that is also on our to-do list. That was just not part of tonight's presentation.
Oh, okay, and I was gonna say, because, I mean, it's what the city council feels best, but I liked Wes's idea of trying to consolidate our sidewalk building projects. And
Keep in perspective, though, that some developers want to put in the sidewalks. Even if it is out in the middle of nowhere, a developer may say, I would rather put the sidewalks in, know they're there, my clients want it, blah, blah, blah. So I think we need to maintain an option of put it in.
no, that's for next month, okay.
I think to answer your question, though, Gail, and Rob, you can help me out with this, but the sidewalk regulation that the board put in place, I'm sure, was after 2009. So if it was, it wouldn't have been included in this more than likely.
So again,
but-
so that's a separate collection, is the sidewalk. Oh, okay. All right, so this is just a basic impact fee, but the sidewalk fund is a different fund assessed.
And we don't have one yet.
There is no fund.
And there is no
There
fund.
is nothing, we're working on that.
Correct.
Okay.
We'll get there. Hopefully that'll be a presentation for next month.
I was doing some research on that this afternoon on my own, trying to get a sample.
Mike's been trying to get
Alright.
one for 3 years.
So I have a question, and then Bruce can ask a question.
I just would like to point out that
All right.
I think a large part of the concern at the city council is we need to clean this up.
Yeah.
But the other part is, some of us sat here when we were told they're entitled to an 80% reduction in, let me finish. I think the council would like to see a consistent awarding or collection of impact fees, and not this sort of random, okay, for him, not for her, whatever that used to go on. I think you and I have had this conversation, so you know how I feel anyways. But I want to say publicly, I think the council hopes to see this, what you're doing, but also some consistency on how these things are collected going forward.
We did have a very lengthy discussion through this whole last week or so of our research and doing impact fees, and our initial thoughts on it is the city has probably not been consistent in how it has managed the impact fee ordinance through its original adoption. And we looked at that. It was very much in depth the last couple days of, we don't think it has been done appropriately. And we are adding mechanisms to that so that moving forward, we'll be very consistent with doing this. And I agree with you. And consistency is key. And through the course of history, it appears the planning department has not been consistent with that.
Thank you.
So one question I have, well, I have two questions actually. Now, if a developer decides to put the sidewalk, that automatically obligates the city to have to maintain it, right?
That is Wes's assumption on that, that we would be required to maintain that sidewalk.
Okay, you said assumption, so there's a question there.
Only if
you
it's
can
on
get
a
an
public
answer.
road. If it's on a private road, it is not the city's.
Right, that I understand, but like, but really, the only one we're concerned about is on public road.
Correct.
Well, yeah, our only concern is the public roads, and then,
Right.
like I said, and there's also been this, like I said, the like Wes calls them his sidewalks to nowhere, where there is segments of
Yeah.
public road that have sidewalks that just stop
So
on
this is a
each side.
question that needs to be answered.
Yes, and I think that we are really hoping to have a really detailed report sooner rather than later on how we want to manage sidewalks moving forward.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think that has been inconsistent, and I'm a big fan of consistency. So that is also my goal.
Another question. Oh, I'll get back to it. So this was so when someone appeals the waiver, assuming we deny the waiver and they appeal it, does that put into question the entire approval, or like because if we approve the project and then we deny the waiver and then they go to court and then they get their waiver in court.
My understanding is that what happens is, it's just based off reading the RSA, if the board issues an approval and does not include a waiver, an applicant is able to appeal that approval without the waiver to the, either the Superior Court or the Housing Appeals Board, depending on what type of use it is. I will say, after reading the RSA for the Housing Appeals Board, it does break down like the jurisdiction. One of the separate jurisdictions it has is over permits and fees. So it does kind of separate it out. I'm not sure entirely if legally they can separate it out when it goes to the appeals board or to court. That would have to be, I think, a question for legal.
We might have to ask legal that question.
Yeah, I'd like to know because I feel that
good question,
Yeah.
actually.
It is a good
Yeah.
question.
And I,
Agreed.
I don't have the answer to that. I will have to seek a higher level.
Please do.
That's a great question.
And, yeah, go ahead.
Given the fact that this total fee schedule, that column, hasn't been, reviewed in quite some time, 2009, I think you said that was
Correct. Yep.
adopted. That's quite a long period of time that's passed. And given the fact that this board has the purview of reviewing this and requesting an update, I would urge this board to have the planning department look into hiring, I guess, independent third party does this kind of work, to analyze this table and bring it up to 2024 standards, inflation considerations and other.
Send me
That
a
goes
note,
to city.
I'll bring it up.
That goes to the city to do
Yeah,
that.
I'll, if he sends me a note, I'll bring it up at the next city council meeting.
You got it.
So we have to we have to recommend to council to.
That's where the money comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need money.
I've got to ask them for the money to do it. So,
Right. So
gonna
I'm
ask for
urging
two
you
things.
to,
And who would do that? I mean.
You were gonna ask for one other. There were two, there's this,
and the 50%?
yeah, there's this, but there was also, what were we talking about, that he was gonna ask the city council for funds to hire somebody to,
Is it for the map?
oh,
Was it for the map?
what did I talk about?
For the signs? The unsafe structure?
No,
that what it was?
we talked about short-term lodging.
no, earlier
Not
tonight.
fire.
If I knew, I would have already said so.
Oh, no, I made that same comment for the impact fees, when I referenced the report that was done in 2009.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Just send me a note, I will bring it up.
You got it.
I'm sure you'll mention it to Craig.
Yep.
Kirk, I mean.
Money well spent.
Yep,
Yep.
I agree. and
Nope,
I'll
absolutely.
fight for it.
Absolutely, we can
I'll
do that.
fight for it. You'll need to get me some dollar amounts.
We will find some dollar amounts.
Yeah, that would,
Oh, yeah.
you guys are pretty much knee deep.
It'll pay for itself.
You're
Over
pretty much
time.
over, really, the planning
And
process.
let me explain to everybody, this is a very difficult year for us because we have dramatic wage problems.
Right.
We have towns next door that are paying $5 an hour more for cops and firemen and trucking companies that are paying $30 an hour for dump truck drivers. Why would you want to work for 20 here? And I suspect Parks and Rec has many of the same problems. So, the budget process this year is going to be very difficult for us. My view is we need to take care of city employees, and then whatever's left over, we'll pave a road or whatever else we have to do. But I think it's critical that we've got some damn good employees, and we ought to try and hang on to them, I think. Sorry, didn't mean to pontificate, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that kind of goes with what I've been saying month after month, though, on these waivers. I really think there should not be any.
Yeah.
That gets rid of, should they get one, or should they?
I like the idea that what Rob put up is that there's specific categories that
But we
qualify
still
for
need to
waiver.
really think about the employees, and we are losing people
Oh,
every
no, I'm
month.
just saying I'm agreeing with you, but, to tighten up the rules on when a waiver can be granted even. I mean, we
Well,
can,
I think he said that.
yeah, and that's what I
I mean,
like.
even if it's infill, they're adding people in, and this city is just going so fast.
But it is, but it's not, well, whatever, that's.
They need every dollar.
I would also point out too that impact fees do not go towards wages. Now, that would
They go to
offset the
capital.
budget so that way it would
They go
have
to
more
capital,
available,
right?
but yes.
Understand.
Yeah.
But if it goes to buy a car or a
Correct.
chalkboard, it's money we then can spend on wages.
Well, here's the thing. I
Yes.
think the
Yes.
guideline is saying where we can waive them, but it's not saying we have to. So let's just keep that in mind.
And when the city council goes to amend the ordinance, if it so chooses, they could address the waiver situation and rework that language as well. I mean,
I think we're looking for a recommendation.
Yep.
Okay.
So we will go out and we'll do a third party, we'll make the request to city council. We'll get a quote for some reviews to get this done, and then we'll bring that study back here, and we can have a larger discussion on what we should do as an organization to move forward. And I think we can address.
And just so you all are aware, I do mean to, so that you understand, we have situations where we've granted tax advantages for properties
Right.
to do a certain thing. They change their mind and do something different, and oh, by the way, the tax advantage goes to the people who buy the properties. Meanwhile, some poor stiff here's tax bill goes up to make up for that money that we lost. So we've got to tighten this all up. I mean, I agree with every word that's been said here, so, and I think Rob knows, but I'm the one who asked at city council that there be a question about this, because I've sat here and watched it over the years, and at the risk of going farther than I probably ought to, I've been here long enough to know things have really changed for the better with this team. I don't mean to disparage anybody else. Everybody tried to do a good job, but this tonight is something we haven't seen. You and I certainly haven't. You and I haven't seen in all the time we've been here. And thank you for this.
No,
And
no,
thank you, and thank you. I mean, your staff.
I do want to point out, if I may, I'm very fortunate that I have two great staff in attendance tonight, and I can't wait for Monday. We've got a new administrative assistant starting, so we are moving forward, and everything is very exciting.
How about conservation?
I actually just got an application yesterday
Good.
for somebody that is probably overqualified for the position. So I'll be interviewing them on Friday.
Nice.
Be nice to have someone overqualified.
For
But here again is where wages are critical. How do you attract people if you don't pay them?
Rob,
Sorry, I didn't.
wondered if you could just find out for me. I feel like if I were to vote on an impact fee, I would be a little partial. So I'm not sure if I should be stepping back from that vote.
We all have our partials.
Yeah, we all have our
But I
thing.
don't
You
think
personally get financial gain.
No,
I
she does not.
I get financial gain from the recreation side of this.
Yes, but
So
it doesn't
capital.
go in your pocket.
Personal.
Does not go into my pocket, no.
No, you're all right.
But
Unlike
I am
the Attorney General in
partial
Alabama or Georgia.
getting impact
No,
fees.
and
But you're here to represent your
You don't get a
department,
personal
so that's
benefit. You're
okay.
appropriate.
All right,
No, no.
It has to literally go in your pocket.
all right. It doesn't.
Unfortunately, it's not.
All right, we're all safe there, by the
We're gonna
way.
make sure of that, Amy, that it
I'll just put the
doesn't go
last
into
word
It's
on
not going
this.
in your pocket, Aim.
I just want to put the last word on this. Impact fees are not, they're not punitive, like they're for the city. So we should stop thinking about them that way.
They're not punitive, but they're also a development tool. I mean, the point perhaps of maybe allowing reductions in impact fees for infill is because that may be a direction that the city wants to make better use of what we've got in our city proper before we start sprawling out where we don't have infrastructure yet. I mean, I'm saying they could be tweaked year to year. I mean, it just takes, city council just has to decide, okay, we've infilled enough, now we're going to reduce that back to 50%. But it can be a very important development tool to direct on the part of the planning department and the city, how we want and what we want built where, and let's not negate the fact that that's a tool in the toolbox that we don't want to start throwing away,
All right, thank you, Gail.
okay?
The ordinance usually spells out too, especially in the case of waivers, why those waivers were put there in the first place, so.
And exactly, and that's usually a big picture thing where the city wants this and wants to, like the low-income housing, the city wants to encourage people to build that. So that may be a good reason to cut someone, a developer, potential developer, a break on an impact fee. 10 years from now, that may not be a problem, and they may
Right.
decide, no, you don't get a waiver for that.
We can table that discussion for next time.
You can always change it.
Thanks.
Well, then, nothing says it has to be 100%.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, no, I
80%
don't
or
know that, but I'm
whatever.
just saying, it's a tool in the toolbox.
More discussions for later. Thanks. All right.
Planning Department report.
That's right.
So, I don't know if you noticed, we do have a new staff review that was
Yeah.
Yeah, I
in our
noticed.
packet.
Yeah.
We were kind of looking for some input, if that was the right direction, wrong direction. You'd like to see different information, more information.
I found it very helpful myself.
Thank
I knew it had a different look. I knew something was different.
Yep, so, that was, Tyler's first task as assistant planner was to redevelop our staff review.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's great.
that's my only, report. And we're getting the administrative assistant starting on Monday. So,
Good
very
news,
excited.
Good news. Very good.
I'd like to apologize to everybody for, A, being late, and second, wandering off once or twice. I had a chemical stress test, and it didn't sit well with me.
It's okay.
We're just glad you're here.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad I'm here.
Where's the defibrillator?
Yeah, amen.
Downstairs, I got it, don't worry.
Let me talk before we all adjourn here. I'm looking at this map of the Captain Jack's. I cannot see 25% green space on here. I must be blind. But if somebody wanted to build an apartment building downtown, 40 units, you tell me that they only need 10% green space?
Urban commercial zone, yeah.
How, I can't see that, 10%.
So when they adopted the urban commercial district, that was the thought process was most of those areas were already developed. So your green space is probably going to be what it is. Most of the lots downtown have zero green space. They're buildings built all the way to the boundary lines, and they would never be able to meet green space requirements if they were redeveloped. And that would follow most of these properties that are in this urban compact core, that they're never gonna meet green space requirements. And if you made it much more restrictive than the 10%, you're really becoming more restrictive and then sending everybody to the zoning board.
40 units, 30 of them are gonna be sold. I never thought Barton's was gonna sell for over $1 million a unit. I was shocked. The cheapest one sold for $725. These units are gonna sell for some money.
Well,
They don't have a yard, they don't have anything except parking lot. And a busy restaurant right next door.
People who buy it, though, they're gonna be well aware
Well,
of
they're,
that, so,
yeah, you know, buyer
That's what
beware.
they're used to.
but-
Yeah, exactly, and that's their
No.
business plan. I mean, if that's what the banks want to see, to build this, then that's really what they're gonna have to do. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said, would I love to see something come along where they kept the bottom 2 floors as rental apartments, but the business model might not allow that in terms of what the bank, commercial lenders are
I
saying.
know, you had a lot of concerns about it being a huge parking lot.
And I did, yeah.
And
But
I'm
it-
sympathetic to what Michael's saying as well. But, you know, I haven't walked that property, but I've driven by it like a million times.
And it is a
It's
parking-
already a
it
parking
is a
lot and
parking
a
lot,
building,
yeah, and
okay?
that's-
So I don't
that's
see
true.
there being much
Yeah.
change to what's already there.
And you're probably right,
honestly.
in this particular
Yeah,
project,
in
which
this-
we
in this
probably
case.
shouldn't be discussing without
know,
him.
it's,
But,
you know,
but you're right, and once he said that, if it's all paved now, but pavement can come up. You know, it's just so close to the water. I hate to see pavement so close to the water.
Yeah,
That's just
well,
me.
I'm sure they'll have a storm management plan, and we'll have a chance to review it.
And that's part of it. This is a conceptual, but like I said, their whole business plan is determined by what the bank tells them they can build.
Yeah, I want to limit our conversation on that since
And-
that's,
and
it's
I
not
don't
on the
think we should
agenda.
be talking
and
about that with them
It was just a
not here.
conceptual, so, if we
Fair
want
enough.
to talk about the table of dimensional standards, I think that would be appropriate, but I don't want to
Right.
discuss a project that has not been submitted yet.
I agree.
Do we need to do liaison reports right now?
I don't have any liaison reports, currently. But I can talk about Historic District Commission. There was a subcommittee, meeting of that, and, I think there might be some forward momentum on the ordinance. I'm working on some language right now that I will pass back forward to the city manager. He will pass that on to the Government and Ordinance Subcommittee. And then, that could potentially go to city council.
I think we've seen some iteration of it and wanted more. And I can tell you that one of the concerns were that the area was too broad. I don't know if you were,
Yeah, I was there.
yeah. You know, that maybe we should exempt existing, anyways.
Yeah, there was some discussion on what exemptions and what, if a property was within the bounds, but it really didn't meet the criteria of being a historic structure, of how do we protect those properties? And I think that's some language that we're looking on what can we incorporate into that ordinance to preserve those structures or protect those structures. So,
All right, thank you.
But there is movement,
There
in
is.
fairness. The Government Ordinance and something else committee is actively looking at and pursuing it. So we hope to see something in the to identify the buildings that ought to be historically preserved.
that's another conversation that's happening every day in my office as well.
If I can just, real quick, because I am presumably the representative on the Lakes Region Planning Commission. And, you know, if it wasn't for Stacy, I would have no idea when these meetings are, because I'm not getting, so my question is, because there was brought up previous meeting that this appointment needed to go through the Appointments Committee. If that's the case, I was not aware of it. I've not gone through that process.
I will check for you, Scott.
So I don't know if I should, do I have the blessing of this committee to attend the next meeting? Should I attend the meeting since I
They're
haven't been?
open meetings,
Yes.
Steve. You can go. It's just,
They are public anyway.
they're public
all right,
meetings,
okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Scott, I will find out for you and I'll get you.
Oh, Scott.
okay, yeah, all right.
I'll
yeah.
get a hold.
Yeah,
My
so
my
I
gut
just want to make
reaction
sure
is, this is an appointment of this,
by this committee,
board.
yeah, by this
Yeah.
board,
and I don't,
okay.
I'm on the appointments
Yeah, all right,
committee and
all
I'll
right. So
check.
I will plan to attend the next meeting.
Just start
which is
attending,
What's
yep.
coming up. Thank you for forwarding me those emails.
And I think once you go and you
Get-
introduce
I will get-
yourself,
yeah, we'll get up to
she
date.
will
Yeah.
get your,
I'm sure.
yeah.
Thank you.
I have one last question. How come she's so tan?
She
I was
ran
in
away.
Florida,
What?
How long were you there?
but we're still filming.
How long?
So,
Well, we filmed till we
we
adjourned.
need to adjourn.
Is that part of the conservation report?
So, Gail is
Oh,
your new
Gail?
conservation.
Right.
I hope you all
So
have
you have a
seen
report?
how things are going here.
Nothing to report.
We meet tomorrow night.
Okay.
Well, a couple of things that we're still working on is coming forward, and Rob is in there, and I think, Tyler, you're there tomorrow, and then we've got a new conservation person coming, hopefully, is, we have been asked to be, a host, another lake host sponsorship for, invasive species control. And that is in the process of going forward. Right now, the Conservation Commission is pretty much focused on whatever we have in front of us, in terms of projects, on top of which now we're moving into the milfoil and invasive species. And considerably that the board ought to know is there have been another invasive species identified at the top of O-Pee-Chee Park and at the lower Paugus Bay. And I believe it's a invasive kind of water lily. And this is a very different animal or different species than milfoil, but is equally as invasive. It's probably transported the same way. which is along propellers of boats that move back and forth. It spreads quickly, it has no natural predator. And there has been some talk among the board of having the state limnologist, which is a big word for lake specialist, which is what the state limnologist is, to have a Zoom meeting at some point where hopefully we can get a member or two of the city council, because there's a lot of money out there for these kinds of projects, and what we need to do is to try to consolidate our efforts to get what we need for matching grants to come from the city portion to get this money. But that new invasive species, apparently, I don't know a lot about it, not like milfoil, which has been around a long time. But this is starting to present a problem, and it's the same choke points as they come into the top of Opeechee from Paugus Bay. Other than that, the only thing we're really working on is the projects that we've got in front of us. And until we get some staff that's really dedicated to working towards conservation, it's sort of a holding pattern.
The chairman of the Conservation Commission spoke to the city council 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And one of the things that was brought up was that, you know, all the usual suspect areas for milfoil and everything else are in the works or whatever. One of the things that was brought up by me and echoed by others was that there are other ponds and lakes in the city that need to be considered for these things as well. Paugus, Pickerel.
Pickerel Cove?
Cove, there you go. Pickerel Cove was one. My next door neighbors remind me Pickerel Pond is one. And we have a couple of other small places in the city that ought to be at least looked at for those reasons. So we've asked that they consider looking at some of these other.
Well, and like I said, and I believe, Bruce, that once we get a full-time conservation technician that will come up, work on developing what we would consider to be a full-scale conservation plan, that'll all get factored into. But I admit, we've sort of piecemealing it, but we're working with what we have and what we can do, and also within the confines of the city budget, because all of these remediation projects require a match from the city council. And we have given them, for their budget, what information we know. But they keep, you know what I mean, it's kind of a moving target. But the season is upon us. They'll start those projects usually in the end of May, right, Stacy? You sat on the board a lot longer than I did, but the Lake Host projects and the milfoil irradiation, and they'll do what they can, but those prices are going up too for the people who do it. And
There is actually, I need to give you an email of a connection that is excellent with, she runs a whole volunteer thing on lakes and rivers.
okay, all right.
I'll forward that
I
to
mean,
you.
I don't disagree with Bruce.
Pat Tarpey.
You better
Oh, I
not.
know, I've heard of Pat
Okay.
Tarpey. I don't know her, but, no, I mean, he's right, there are other water bodies. I'm just saying that this is the one that's, we've talked about the last couple of meetings with this new, especially with the onset or the appearance of a new invasive species, which is not what we wanted to hear. It's not good news.
All right, thank you, Gil.
Nothing from the city council beyond what I've already told. One other thing, I think the board should go on record as recognizing that the acting chairman of, or whatever of the board has done an outstanding job compared to that other nitwit, whatever his name is.
He's out celebrating the
Because
sale.
we know he's not watching, right? No.
It's a couple of beers and he'll forget.
Well, thank you.
No, I mean it sincerely, I thought
Charlie's
he
in
did well.
Daytona, isn't he?
I believe so, yes.
Still filming.
Got it. All right, let's adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.
And the meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other business?
No.
No other business?
The meeting's adjourned now.
It's adjourned, we can't have any other business.
Oh, did we have a motion to